Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. Tonight we have a special look back at the visit to the Vatican by Indigenous delegates earlier this year. Now, Pope Francis apologized for the Catholic Church's role in the horrific abuses conducted at residential schools. APTN's Tina House was in Italy during that week and has this report from the Vatican City.
As over 200 delegates gathered at the Vatican for a final audience with the Holy See, emotions were high as they awaited to see if all the testimony from survivors and presentations from leaders made an impact on the Pope. Fred Kelly was the first to do a prayer.
Holy Father, may the Creator of the Great Spirit bless us today as we meet, that we can walk into the future aware that we must allow and follow the 7 laws of creation, and so that we can live not only in peace and harmony, but in the meantime that we can find that reconciliation and the healing.
And after the prayers were spoken, the Pope finally said the words many have been waiting for.
For the deplorable conduct of these members of the Catholic Church,
e vorrei dirvi di tutto cuore, sono molto addolorato. E mi unisco ai fratelli vescovi canadesi.
I ask for God's forgiveness, and I want to say to you with all my heart, I am very sorry.
Since the late 1800s, residential schools were established in Canada. Over 150,000 Indigenous children were forcibly removed from their homes. Their parents faced jail time if they tried to stop the removal of their children, and oftentimes did not even know where they were. And meanwhile, many of those children suffered terrible abuses that left them scarred for life, and for others, they just never made it home. And here in Rome, the historic meetings between Pope Francis and the Indigenous delegation, the leadership here says this week has laid down a path to walk forward in reconciliation.
And so our message to the world is that we are all in this together. We're human beings. Let's work together to humanize the way we need to with Mother Earth.
For Métis National Council President Cassidy Caron, she says it was an emotional time listening to that long-awaited apology.
I truly felt the sincerity in Pope Francis's words. I felt that he truly translated the truths that we all shared this week from his head into his heart.
For the Tecamseh that confirmed discovery of 215 hidden graves of children really intensified the urgency for the Catholic Church to admit wrongdoing and begin to make amends like what was done today. If those little ones were here today to hear that word sorry, what do you think that they would be feeling?
I think if those little ones were here today to hear those words that came from him, I think would be a step in that right direction. But I think that it's really important also for those parents. So to me, it's going to be something that's extremely important and gives hope to those little ones as well, to know that he is doing those right steps.
And over in St. Peter's Square, powwow dancers and singers performed in celebration of this new path that's been forged, one that holds promise for a new beginning and a chance at healing. And with that long-awaited apology here in Rome, Pope Francis has now promised to come to Canada in July to officially apologize to Indigenous people in Canada. Tina House, APTN National News, Rome.
One of the delegates that met with Pope Francis had been waiting a long time to hear that apology. Tina House caught up with Grand Chief Willie Littlechild. Here's that interview from St. Peter's Square at the Vatican.
Thank you. I'm here today with Grand Chief Willie Littlechild, who was there when Pope Francis apologized to the residential schools in Canada. Grand Chief, how was it for you to hear those words, "I'm sorry"?
It was very, very emotional. at a number of levels. First of all, 6 years going across the country, listening to over 7,000 survivors. Many of them called for that. They said, in order for me to heal, I need to hear the Pope say, I'm sorry. And from that one perspective, and for an individual perspective, it took me a very long time to try and heal myself from the trauma of residential school, because I was in residential school for 14 years. And many times I was hearing my own story. So shedding tears with the survivors, sometimes laughing with the survivors, celebrating with the survivors. So it was a very, very important call that we made, I thought, from the Commission, to call on the Pope to come to Canada and apologize to the survivors, because we're losing so many on a daily basis now. So it was very special, because also it's my birthday today, and it's probably the best birthday gift I'll ever receive, to hear the apology from His Holiness, the Pope. He not only said, I am sorry, he went beyond that and said, I'm very sorry, which was more emphatic in a sense of emotion, more impact in sense of emotion. But we need to hear that at home. He needs to come to Canada, which he said he would, but share the same apology to the living survivors and all those that have gone ahead on their spirit journey.
Grand Chief, your story is very powerful. You've connected with so many others that have the same story as you. Happy birthday, Grand Chief. What an amazing gift today for all of us in Canada watching your story evolve, and the stories of other people being able to share their truth, to share their honesty about what truly happened. Is this a moment for you to now truly start to heal from what happened to you?
Yes, it is. It's also, I think, very, very important to signal it as a start of reconciliation. Now that we know the truth of what happened, the truth is still unfolding, but it's also now time to turn to true reconciliation. And I think today, with that apology that we had, begins that journey to reconciliation together.
Grand Chief, thank you for being such an incredible leader for our people. Thank you very much, and happy birthday again.
Thank you.
Back to you in studio.
All right, we need to step aside for a short break, but when we come back, more from our coverage of the visit to Rome by Indigenous delegates earlier this year. Welcome back to APTN National News. Delegates for the Métis and Inuit held a historic meeting with Pope Francis at the Vatican. APTN's Tina House was in Italy and has this report on the build-up to that meeting.
It's a historic day and years in the making, but finally, Métis leaders and residential school survivors from Canada are here in Rome, Italy, to tell their truth about what happened at residential schools to their people. Just like the First Nations and Inuit people, Métis children were also forcibly taken from their homes and put into residential schools, except in many cases, those Métis children were even more discriminated against because of their mixed race. But for Métis National President Cassidy Caron, today is about creating a new beginning and hopefully start to heal from what many say is a crime against humanity.
We spent some time last night with our delegation just meeting one last time before we go into the meeting, and had some really great conversations with our survivors who will be leading our meeting today. They will be front and center. Their voices will be elevated throughout this entire day, and so we're really looking forward to bringing our elders in there and really upholding them, taking care of them, and sharing the stories of the Métis Nation and the experiences of residential schools that our Métis children suffered. We really hope that the Pope listens and hears and acknowledges this pain today.
The day started with a ceremonial event with the Métis National Council as they showcased a pair of red moccasins that they will be presenting to the Pope, created by Métis delegate and artist Mitch Case. The gift was designed with the Pope's colors in the beading, along with the Métis Nation's colors. The red elk hide represent the red shoes that the Pope normally wears. He also created this one-of-a-kind beaded jacket for the Métis National Council president to wear to the meeting with Pope Francis. However, Case says he is a bit apprehensive of the meeting.
The church has a long way to walk before we could possibly forgive them for what they did. But if he is willing to walk with us, then we'll be willing to walk with him.
Today is the day that the church walks in reconciliation with Indigenous leaders and survivors as they hope to find some healing and justice from the many years of abuses suffered by so many children that were locked inside of these institutions, and I won't call them schools. Behind me here are some of the archbishops that have gathered, and also bishops from Canada that are joining Indigenous leaders today.
There seems to be a good spirit here, a good spirit of anticipation, and we'll just see how it all unfolds now. We're about to head off with some of the Métis members and some of the Inuit later this morning, and they'll have a chance to meet the Pope, and we'll see how that goes.
Is this your opportunity to also apologize to the people that went to residential school in your region?
We've done that. So, as you may know, in Canada, that's happened many, many times since the early 90s.
As Archbishop, are you willing to go further and just not just say sorry, but actually launch investigations into the abuses done to Indigenous people in Alberta?
I'm happy to cooperate with anything, any process that will help people tell their story. That seems to be the key thing. So if there were ever an investigation launched, we'd cooperate, obviously.
And after a half-hour meeting with the Pope, the Métis delegation walked out of the Vatican. 85-year-old Angie Crier says the meeting was a long time coming, and she wanted the Pope to know that despite everything that happened, it didn't break her spirit.
We're stronger now. And we help each other, we support each other, and one thing we have now is our pride. They did not break us. We're still here, and we intend to live here forever. And we're going to help us work with us, which is a big drive for us. It's awesome.
The Inuit delegation chose not to participate in an interview for this story. Tina House, APTN National News, Rome.
And with the Métis and Inuit delegation having wrapped up their meeting with Pope Francis at the Vatican, they shared with him how the horrific abuses they suffered at residential schools still affects their lives. Tina House has this report from Rome.
It's all led up to this moment as survivors and leaders gathered in Rome to meet the Pope at the Vatican. For the Métis delegation, 3 residential school survivors were able to share their stories with him personally and tell him how the abuse they suffered has deeply affected their lives and the lives of their children and grandchildren.
But those 3 survivors being representative of and emblematic of many, many, many more at home. And I cannot say enough about Angie and Anne and Emile and how incredibly I have 3 new, never mind Marvel and their universe, those superheroes are right there in that room.
And Métis National Council President Karen says that the real action the delegation calls upon is an apology on Turtle Island when he visits Canada in the near future. And then there is the important issue of residential school records that have not been released from the church.
So we want unfettered access to those records. We also want access to our cultural artifacts that are held here in Rome and at the Vatican. Those artifacts tell a story about our communities. Those are our history. In reconciliation, we talked about an apology and that acknowledgement. We've heard from our survivors that many of them need that to move forward.
Alfredo Cirelli has worked in St. Peter's Square for over 40 years, selling rosaries and holy water. he found out about the horrors at Canadian residential schools on television in Italy.
It broke my heart to be. I saw that. If you see them, I have a problem for all people, but for the children more. It broke my heart because I am father, I am grandfather, I have children. I think you go in the school, I have the problem for the priest, for the professor. I don't know if my religion, I don't know. I cry for the baby, for the children.
We have done the difficult work of preparing for our journey, for our conversation with the Pope. We have done the work of translating our words to those that he would understand. And now it is his turn to join us in that work. He and Catholics around the world must now do the work of translating the words that we have spoken today and will continue to speak from their heads into their hearts and ultimately into real action.
The Inuit delegation met with the Pope after the Métis National Council.
There were a number of conversations about faith and about the ongoing presence of the Catholic Church in Inuit Nunangat. There was a lot of conversation about residential schools and the negative impacts of residential schools on Inuit and the intergenerational trauma aspect of residential schools.
Obed also said that they requested that the Pope intervene in the case of former priest Johannes Revoir, who's wanted for sex crimes he allegedly committed in the 1960s in Nunavut. In 1993, he fled to France, which does not have an extradition order with Canada, and just last month, RCMP in Nunavut issued an arrest warrant for him.
It is such a heartbreaking reality that some people who should have been brought to justice decades ago have not seen justice, and those who have been abused and those victims have sometimes died before they have seen justice.
Since the press conference, the Missionary Oblates of Mary Immaculate has requested a meeting in Rome with President Nathan Obed regarding Johannes Revoir. We will bring you more updates on that story later this week. Tina House, APTN National News, Rome.
All right, we need to take one final break, but still to come, more from Tina House and her coverage of this historic event. Welcome back. First Nations leaders, survivors, and youth met with Pope Francis to share how residential schools affected their lives and the lives of thousands of others. APTN's Tina House continues her ongoing coverage of this historic event and has this story.
As drummers sang the Coast Salish anthem of Chief Jan George, leaders and residential school survivors gathered outside their hotel to make their way to the Vatican. Cookbee Roseanne Casimir from Kamloops to Sequepum will be talking directly to Pope Francis.
We started today off with ceremony and had some much needed grounding, some song, and, you know, some hugs and blessings from my family from back home, British Columbia, and connecting here with my family that I'm going to the Vatican with as well. And I feel good about this journey that I'm taking and the messages that I'll be delivering.
For Vice Chief David Pratt from Saskatchewan, he says the mandate for this meeting is clear.
We're here to give a message to the Pope and the Catholic Church that, number one, they have to apologize, that to recognize, what they've done to our people as a result of that federal government policy, but number two, to share with us the records that they have, not only in Canada, but here in the Vatican.
And as they boarded the bus to go to the Vatican, we ran into Lauren Green from Musqueam First Nation.
I'm overwhelmed with joy.
And what do you hope from today's meeting?
For us to move forward, to be able to move forward. The apology would mean a lot for our people.
And after a 2-hour meeting, the delegation walked through St. Peter's Square, led by former National Chief Phil Fontaine and National Dene Chief Jerry Antoine.
For all that he heard today and probably heard with the Métis and Inuit delegations about the horrible experience of too many of our people that attended residential schools. He heard about the doctrine of discovery and our issues with that, the papal bulls. He heard about the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation, the 94 calls to action, the principles of reconciliation. Yes, he was given a plate full of issues that are of critical importance and concern for our people.
For Grand Chief Willie Littlechild, he spent 14 years in 3 different residential schools, and he believes what happened here in Rome this week is a giant step forward in healing.
I spent 14 years of my life in 3 different residential schools. Tomorrow is my birthday, and the gift we received today, or I received today, is a good day that tomorrow will be the first day of reconciliation.
Despite not getting the apology during this latest meeting with the Pope, he asked for a private encounter with the core delegation that he met with this week, which will take place after the general audience with the entire delegation tomorrow. Tina House, APTN National News, Rome.
Survivors, families, and Indigenous organizations from across the country responded to Pope Francis's apology for the horrors at Catholic-run residential schools. Here's Annette Francis with a mixed bag of reaction.
On Friday, Pope Francis stood in front of over 200 Indigenous delegates and residential school survivors. They made the trip to the Vatican seeking an apology, and he did just that. Adam North Pagan is the president of Legacy of Hope, a national foundation that supports residential school survivors. He says the apology is a major step toward reconciliation.
We're very adamant that that apology needs to come home to Canada, and that apology needs to happen on Canadians in Canada on Indigenous land somewhere, on Turtle Island. To make it a lot more meaningful and to bring reconciliation full circle. So
Michael Dockstader says it wasn't a full apology because Catholic teachings say forgiveness can only come from the top, from God.
So popes don't ask us mortals, us mere mortals, for forgiveness. It doesn't work that way. And what the Pope actually really said was, he felt bad that bad people did bad things to us over here, and that we were hurt by that. But that has nothing to do with the Pope. That has to do with those sinners.
Dennis Shorty is a Casca musician and artist from Ross River, Yukon. At the age of 5, he was taken to Lower Post Residential School in Lower Post, BC, where he was abused. He says the Pope's apology can't undo the cultural and spiritual loss he experienced. That's why he wants action behind it, like financial assistance.
There's nothing there in place for us. Even right now, for me, I use my artwork, my music. What I need is financial help to deal with it for myself. Continue teaching through music, through artwork. Apology is one thing, but action. There has to be action behind it.
The Pope has vowed to come to Canada, perhaps as early as this July, but no exact date has been set. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
All right, that's all we have for you tonight on APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you for joining us, and have a great night.